Extraordinary. Unexpected, surprising or strange. For example, what an extraordinary thing to say.
Facility.
Facility. Buildings, services, equipment, etc. that are provided for a particular purpose. For example, leisure sports facilities.
Fair. Acceptable and appropriate in a particular situation. For example, a fair deal wage price.
Family. A group consisting of one or two parents and their children. For example, I introduced Neil to the other members of my family.
Fasten.
Fasten. To close or join together the two parts of something, to become closed or joined together. For example, fasten something.
Festival. Festival. A series of performances of music, plays, films, etc., usually organized in the same place once a year. A series of public events connected with a particular activity or idea. For example, a film music festival.
Fight. To take part in a war or battle against an enemy. For example, soldiers trained to fight.
Figure.
Figure. A number representing a particular amount, especially one given in official information. For example, the latest sales crime unemployment figures.
Figure.
Figure. A number representing a particular amount, especially one given in official information. For example, the latest sales crime unemployment figures. File. A box or folded piece of card for keeping loose papers together and in order. For example, a box file.
Filmmaker.
Finish. To stop doing something or making something because it is complete. For example, finish something.
Focus.
Focus. The thing or person that people are most interested in, the act of paying special attention to something and making people interested in it. For example, focus of something.
Fold. A part of something, especially cloth, that is folded or hangs as if it had been folded. For example, the folds of her dress. Fold. A part of something, especially cloth, that is folded or hangs as if it had been folded. For example, the folds of her dress.
Footage. Part of a film showing a particular event. For example, old film footage of the moon landing.
4. Used to show who is intended to have or use something or where something is intended to be put. For example, there's a letter for you.
Forever. Used to say that a particular situation or state will always exist. For example, I'll love you forever.
Form. A type or variety of something. For example, all the millions of different life forms on the planet today.
Found.
Found. To start something, such as an organization or an institution, especially by providing money. For example, to found a club/company/school.
Founder. A person who starts an organization, institution, etc. or causes something to be built. For example, the founder and president of the company.
Fraction.
Fraction. A small part or amount of something. For example, only a small fraction of a bank's total deposits will be withdrawn at any one time.
Fragment.
Fragment. A small part of something that has broken off or comes from something larger. For example, fragment of something.
From. Used to show where something starts. For example, she began to walk away from him.
Fund. To provide money for something, usually something official. For example, who is funding this research?
Fundamental.
Fundamental. Serious and very important, affecting the most central and important parts of something. For example, the fundamental principles of scientific method.
Funding.
Funding. Money for a particular purpose, the act of providing money for such a purpose. For example, federal state funding.
Fundraising. The activity of collecting money for a charity or organization, often by organizing social events or entertainments. For example, the hospice is planning a major fundraising event for June.
Gallery. A room or building for showing works of art, especially to the public. For example, a picture gallery.
Gap. A space where something is missing. For example, extra funding is needed to plug the gap.
Gender.
Gender. The fact of being male or female, especially when considered with reference to social and cultural differences, rather than differences in biology, members of a particular gender as a group. For example, issues of class.
Gene. A unit inside a cell that controls a particular quality in a living thing that has been passed on from its parents. For example, a dominant/recessive gene.
Genocide.
Genocide. The murder of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group, with the aim of destroying that nation or group. For example, refugees gave accounts of the mass genocide.
Genre.
Genre. A particular type or style of literature, art, film, or music that you can recognize because of its special features. For example, literary musical genres.
Gig. A performance by musicians playing popular music or jazz in front of an audience, a similar performance by a comedian. For example, they're doing a gig in Boston tonight.
Grant. A sum of money that is given by the government or by another organization to be used for a particular purpose. For example, government/federal grants.
Grid. A pattern of straight lines, usually crossing each other to form squares. For example, New York's grid of streets.
Guest.
Guest. A person that you have invited to your house or to a particular event that you are paying for. For example, they only use the dining room when they have guests.
Guitar.
Guitar. A musical instrument that usually has 6 strings and that you play with your fingers or with a plectrum. For example, an acoustic/electric guitar.
Hang. To attach something, or to be attached, at the top so that the lower part is free or loose. For example, hang something plus adv/prep.
Have. To own, hold or possess something. For example, he had a new car and a boat.
Have to. Used to show that you must do something. For example, sorry.
Helpful. Able to improve a particular situation. For example, helpful advice information.
Herself.
Herself. Used when the woman or girl who performs an action is also affected by it. For example, she hurt herself.
Highlight.
Highlight. To emphasize something, especially so that people give it more attention. For example, the report highlighted the importance of exercise to maintain a healthy body.
Himself. Used when the man or boy who performs an action is also affected by it. For example, he introduced himself.
Holy. Connected with God or a particular religion. For example, the Holy Bible.
Hook. A curved piece of metal, plastic or wire for hanging things on, catching fish with, etc. For example, a picture curtain coat hook.
Hope. To want something to happen and think that it is possible. For example, all we can do now is wait and hope.
Idea. A plan, thought or suggestion, especially about what to do in a particular situation. For example, it would be a good idea to call before we leave.
Implement.
Implement. To make something that has been officially decided start to happen or be used. For example, to implement changes/decisions/policies/reforms.
Implementation. The act of making something that has been officially decided start to happen or be used. For example, the implementation of the new system.
Inappropriate. Not suitable or appropriate in a particular situation. For example, inappropriate behavior/language.
Include. If one thing includes another, it has the second thing as one of its parts. For example, include something.
Included.
Included. Contained as part of something. For example, all of Europe, Britain included.
Including.
Including. Having something as part of a group or set. For example, I've got 3 days holiday including New Year's Day.
Incorporate. To include something so that it forms a part of something. For example, incorporate something.
Increasingly.
Increasingly. More and more all the time. For example, tourism is playing an increasingly important role in the region's economy.
Indicate.
Indicate. To show that something is true or exists. For example, indicate something.
Indicator.
Indicator. A sign that shows you what something is like or how a situation is changing. For example, the economic indicators are better than expected.